So let's go ahead and talk about something that I really, really did not want to have to talk about, but I've seen a few comments, and so it's time to address this once and for all. So when I look at YouTube, social media altogether, there is about 5 billion people that use social media altogether. Now that is inclusive of, think comparatively looking at that there are only about 8 billion people in the world. So the majority of the world now is on social media. So when it comes to my push towards social media, especially when it comes to ministry or social fire. I just don't believe that anybody should have an opinion. Let me change that because I was going to say anybody should have an opinion, but everybody has an opinion on what we should and should not be doing in the church. So, when this ministry was birthed, and I'll go ahead and be very transparent here, God gave this to my wife. He shared it with my wife because we were looking at a transition that we were getting ready to experience in ministry. And God had already been troubling me with that. He was getting ready to do something new in my life, something different in my life. Right. And so the way God worked it with me and my wife is that He gave this vision to her, but He didn't give it to her completely. And the way that He gave it to her was unique to me because I didn't understand it. I did not, but it at least gave me a direction. And so God was redefining what I knew as church because I had been a senior pastor and understood the terrestrial, the brick and mortar church, Sundays at 11, 3, 11, 2, for those of you that have more than one service, praise and worship, preaching, altar call, typical church service. But God was doing something different with me that He wanted me to do differently as it pertains to church. Now, what God did is that He once again gave it to my wife, and it was for discipleship. Now, when we look at discipleship, many times we'll look at it from the brick and mortar aspect of the church. And so what God did, and I'm going to skip ahead real quick because one day I'll tell the entire story, but what He did was He pushed me into digital ministry. So a little over about a year and a half ago, we launched Social Fire. Now, Social Fire, when we first got on YouTube, it was all about giving a biblical perspective, discussing various theological concepts and ideas. It was answering common questions that Christians have, different things of that nature. However, God grew us because I saw that there were a lot of questions, comments, and even thoughts were as it pertains to where faith and culture intersect. And so what God did, and that's how the channel grew, God pushed me to be more of a guardian on the threshold where faith and culture intersect, giving biblical guidance and even instructions for those in and outside of the church. And so, and this was birthed through, I have several YouTubers that I enjoy, some of them godly, some of them godly-ish. It reminds me of Second Peter. I'm sorry, not but Second Timothy, where it says, "These are they that have a form of godliness, but deny the power thereof." They have a form of godliness, but we know they have a struggle. And I do want to say that there are plenty of people commenting on the church, and the struggle is quite obvious. Whether it's homosexual, if you're talking about the church, but you got a whole lace front on. I don't know if you're homosexual or not. I just know that is questionable. You got, you talking about the church and you got long nails on, it's a fashion statement. I get it, but that's a little questionable as we're looking at a heterosexual standpoint. So, and that's not to say that they can't. That is not to say that they can't comment on the church. That is just saying that their struggle, I'll say that again, their struggle might be a lot more visible than someone who's a liar. hmm And let's just be honest with it. Everybody has a struggle. But here's where God challenged me at. I would look at some of these YouTubers and some of the thought provoking conversations, and I would notice that whenever someone brought a biblical response, they would go off. I saw one YouTuber just outright cuss somebody out on his YouTube live, and we're going to start going live after a while. But I saw him just cuss him out and told him, get out of here with that bull. You know, I was like, but you talking about the church. This is a church conversation. And so I thought that that was quite contradictive to be talking about the church, but not allow biblical perspective. And I just believe that that is something that's a level of Satan. I mean, Satan, it's demonic. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. So I just realized, well, we can't do that. However, God put he put a heart inside of me, a strength inside of me to say, and gave me the vision for, all right, social fire. We don't have a problem with biblical responses, but I believe that we need to become a guardian on the threshold where faith and culture meet and give a biblical perspective and even instructions for those inside and outside of the church. So let me say that I embrace a biblical response. Here's the issue that I'm going to go ahead and talk about. And I hate to even talk about this. I noticed that people in the comments will try to create beefs, issues for me and other YouTubers. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've had plenty of people say it, some from a complimentary standpoint. And one, let me back up and say that I really appreciate our discernment warriors. That's what I call our community, the discernment warriors, because I see sometimes people get down in the comments just trying to attack me and y'all come for them because they just in they feeling it's not facts, it's not even biblical, they just talking. But with that said, I appreciate the community, you know, because when I don't have a problem with somebody who comes with something biblical, they don't even have to agree with me. Community, you don't have to agree with me. But I do want to know what you think, even from your perspective. Sometimes I will put out videos and look at different things. I don't know what the conversation is going to be. I just know there needs to be a conversation about this particular matter. And so this is why I will go certain directions. But back to the point of this that's going on. I notice that some people will almost create a beef by saying that I sound like a certain YouTuber, or I've done this and this YouTuber did that before. And let me back up and just share this with you and help you. Just because two men wear the same cologne doesn't mean that one's trying to mimic the other. That does not mean that. Just because two ladies like the same color fingernail polish or, you know, French tip, whatever, that doesn't mean that they're trying to imitate one another or outdo one another. There are several YouTubers that I didn't even know of until people brought them up in the comments, and I took a look, and they actually have good comments. I mean, not good comments, good content. And so what did I do? I went on over there and subscribed. They got good content. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to start watching their content and putting out stuff like them. That's not the case. Let me explain how social fire works and what we're going to. So social fire right now, this is how I like to do YouTube videos. However, because of life and my regular everyday life, I'm not able to sit down in front of a camera with lights and different things and share with you because sometimes conversations come up that I need to do them very quickly. Thus was born on our channel the faceless videos, because I can do those videos instantly, doesn't take me long, and we can have the conversation. That's why we will do faceless videos, because the conversation needs to be had. I always put them under our playlist of breaking news, so you can always see those videos. However, there comes a time where, like this, that I need to go in depth on some things, just because there needs to be, there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had. And we'll go into depth and we'll do a video where you can actually see me, such as we did with the Bishop J. Drew Sheard video, where we did that. But it's not to imitate anybody. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. Some YouTubers, you all, and y'all going to bear with me just a moment. I got to get this off my chest. Some YouTubers are just full of mud. I can't get in the mud. Every subject that's going on, I'm not going to talk about it here. It's not going to be something that we talk about here, because it's just full of mud. It's grimy. And in order for me to talk about it, I got to get in the mud with them. Just not doing it. If it's not something that we need to, where faith and culture are meeting, if it's not that, and if it's satanic, I will be the first one to tell you that right there is satanic. I'll tell you that. And the reason that a lot of those things go on is because people want to get the hype. You've got a generation, I won't even say a generation, but a group of people out there who love the dirt. They love to hear gossip on somebody else. They love to hear slimy, grimy things. Now, if there's somebody who's not doing right in the body of Christ and they're a leader, let me say this, for instance, give you a case in point. Uh, there was a particular YouTuber who was throwing mud at Bishop T.D. Jakes. Now, let me give you a side note. I am not a fanboy or a fan. I'm not a member of the Potter's House, although I do. I am from Texas. I am not a fan. And when I say a fan, I'm not somebody who just get along with everything Bishop T.D. Jakes says. I put him under the same scrutiny of anybody else. When you give a word and what you do, your life and what you say is important to the body of Christ. So let me say that I am not that person. But this person was throwing mud at Bishop T.D. Jakes. And I had no problem with that. However, where my issue is that it kept coming, and it was from the standpoint of you are guilty until proven innocent. Now, I don't agree with that because that could be any preacher. Now, I do understand Bishop T.D. Jakes has become the golden standard for, they called him the next Billy Graham, and he's a black man. That should say a lot to you right there. His name is up there, and whenever you're at the top, it's always the highest nail that gets hit the hardest. So people going to do that. And so they came out with this, the thing with Diddy and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I know he's probably guilty by association there with Sean Diddy Combs. We did some more research. I even reached out to people at TMZ and got some clarity on it. They didn't care nothing about the TD Jakes thing because they were laser focused on Sean Diddy Combs, right? But this YouTuber just kept making up stuff saying that they were this authority. You telling Bishop T.D. Jakes, you and your camp need to get in touch with me. And then you have all these. I hadn't touched it yet. I didn't touch it because I really didn't care just yet. But then you've got other people start coming out, other prophets, so-called prophets, and I'm going to go ahead and say false prophets. More looks like a New Age guru or something like that, but not a prophesying according to the Bible. But when they come out and saying that they were groomed, if you would, and I'm listening to certain things when it comes to them saying things like groomed, mentored. Now, these are things that are biblical. It is good for a preacher to sit under someone else and mature. That is good. I did not like that the process of integrity. And I'll say it because it's good to sit under somebody. Every son needs a father, and no father ever gets too old to not need a father themselves. Let me just say it like that. But then when that mud and stuff started going back and forth, I went and dug into the YouTuber because there was no actual evidence, because I started looking at, they were saying things like within this many hours, we're going to put it out there. They're going to go to the police. There's going to be a lawsuit. To this day, there has not been a lawsuit filed against T.D. Jakes from any of these supposed accusers. Now, back then, it was a big tidal wave and it was trash because there had not been any documented proof that this was actually happening. This was just mainly this YouTuber. And look at what God did, because that YouTuber was slinging a lot of mud, and a mud tidal wave came their way. And I just said, I'm not doing that anymore. And I did not. I made a few videos on that, the TD Jakes, the allegations towards him. Even in the video, I did say I am not a fan just here just to try to protect Bishop TD Jakes. If he did it, he did it. However, I just believe that anybody needs to have, they need to be innocent until proven guilty. If you don't have no video, no documented proof, shut up. That's just my whole thing. Don't do that. But there's a mob mentality, and we've got to understand that Satan is after preachers. He is after preachers. And if he could use somebody that does not have a relationship with God, who's weak, in that area to bring those allegations. And I just believe that that is a demonic element of YouTube, where people will get some kind of information, then try to put it out there to sabotage somebody's life. I don't agree with that. You've got all kind of lawsuits and documented things that are happening in that regard. So I just want to come on here and say that YouTubers, if you're a YouTuber and you're out here doing the best you can, keep using integrity. Don't stoop. Don't get in the mud. Don't get in the mud. Although it looks like that crowd in the mud is a wonderful crowd, I'm gonna tell you from facts, they don't support. They just come to the comments. They're not gonna send no money. They're not gonna join your group. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. But you have to keep your integrity where it's supposed to be. But I want to know what you think about this. I want to know what you think about it, because I have respect for several other YouTubers. I follow several other YouTubers. Some of those YouTubers even follow me, have more subscribers than me. I go and watch their lives and even comment on their lives. I do, because it's a community. I don't have no issue. And some of them, I question some of their theological aspects, but it's a conversation. It's a conversation. And I love the conversation. Let's talk about it. But I want you to jump down in the comments and let me know what you think about all this mud and all these different things. I didn't want to have to go over this, but I did. Now, everybody knows what Rock Leach thinks about this. All right, jump in the comments. Let me know what you think about it. Let's go.